The waiter set the envelope on the table between the breadbasket and the Bordeaux. Ryan Harmon looked up from whatever he'd been saying to Kendall Voss. Mid-sentence, mid-smile, completely at ease in the way of a man who believed he had everything under control. "Sir," the waiter said, "I was asked to deliver this personally." Ryan looked at the envelope. Brown, official, his full legal name typed on the front. He picked it up, opened it, started reading. Kendall watched his face. I watched from 2 tables over. I'd been watching since they sat down because I knew what was in that envelope, and I knew what was standing behind the waiter, and I knew that Ryan Harmon had absolutely no idea what the next 60 seconds were going to cost him. His face went through 3 things in about 4 seconds. Confusion, recognition, and then something that looked like a man watching a building collapse and realizing too late that he was standing inside it. He looked up. The 3 men in dark suits standing behind the waiter looked back at him. "Mr. Harmon," the one in the middle said, "you've been served. My name is Jess Calloway, and I need to tell you that what happened at that restaurant on that Thursday afternoon was not an accident, not a coincidence, and not something that came together quickly. It took 11 weeks. It took a lawyer named Diane Park who charged $450 an hour and was worth every penny. It took my best friend Claire making the hardest and most precise decisions of her life while 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and living in the same apartment as the man she was systematically dismantling. And it took me keeping my mouth shut for longer than I have ever kept my mouth shut about anything in my entire life. Let me back up. Claire Mercer, Claire Harmon now, though she'd be going back to Mercer the moment the papers cleared, had been my best friend since our freshman year at Boston University, where we'd been assigned to the same dorm floor and had bonded over a shared hatred of the communal bathroom and a shared love of bad reality television and Thai food at 2 in the morning. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her better without trying to. Sharp, funny, the one who remembered your coffee order and your mother's birthday and the name of the professor who'd been terrible to you junior year. She went into financial analysis. I went into corporate event planning. We ended up in New York within 6 months of each other and built our adult lives in the same city, which felt like winning something important. She met Ryan Harmon at a work event. He was in corporate mergers. She was analyzing one of the companies his firm was looking at, and they'd been seated at the same dinner. He was charming in the specific way of men who'd been told their whole lives that they were exceptional. He asked good questions. He followed up. He did all the things that look like paying attention and can be mistaken for a while for being paid attention to. They dated for 2 years. Got married. Claire got pregnant 14 months into the marriage, which was planned. They'd talked about it, wanted it, made the decision together the way people make decisions when they believe they're building something real. She was 4 months pregnant when I saw Ryan going into the building on Park Avenue. Not his office building, a different one, the kind that has discreet brass plaques instead of big lobby directories, the kind where divorce lawyers kept their offices. I stood on the sidewalk and watched him go through the revolving door, and something cold moved through my chest, and I took a picture of the building on my phone before I could talk myself out of it. That night, I looked up the tenants. 3 law firms, 1 accounting practice, 1 wealth management company. One of the law firms specialized in high net worth divorce. I sat with that information for 3 days. 3 days of watching Claire send me pictures of her growing belly and updates about the nursery she and Ryan were supposedly designing together. And asking me to come over for dinner, and being so completely, heartbreakingly happy. 3 days of me telling myself I could be wrong. That there were other reasons a man might visit a building with a divorce lawyer in it. That I was projecting. That I should be sure before I did anything that couldn't be undone. On the fourth day I told her. We were at her kitchen table, the big one in the apartment on the Upper West Side that Ryan had picked and Claire had made into a home. And I put my phone in front of her with the picture of the building and the screenshot of the tenant directory, and I said, I need to show you something, and I need you to hear me out before you react. She looked at the picture, looked at the directory, looked at me. Her face did something I'd never seen it do. Not crying. Claire rarely cried immediately. These she processed first. Not shock exactly. More like a woman who had been half aware of a sound in the distance and had just been told what was making it. How long ago? She said. Tuesday, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Her hand moved to her belly. The automatic gesture she'd developed over the last few months, the one she probably didn't notice herself doing. Okay, she said. Claire, I'm okay. She said it steady, too steady, the kind of steady that's made of something harder than calm. I need to think. She thought for 2 days. Then she called Diane Park. Diane Park was not the kind of lawyer who made you feel better. She was the kind of lawyer who made you feel prepared, which is a different thing, and, in the long run, more useful. She was 51, Korean American, had been doing high-asset divorce work in New York for 20 years, and had a reputation in certain circles for being the attorney you hired when you wanted the situation handled rather than survived. Claire called her on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, she had an appointment. By the following Wednesday, she had a strategy. I know this because Claire told me everything, not in real time, not in the panicked way of someone who needed to be talked down, but in the methodical way of someone who was working a problem and wanted a second set of eyes on the work. She'd been like this in college, too. When something went wrong, she'd go quiet, process it alone, and then come back with a plan fully formed and walk me through it. The plan was this: do nothing visible. Keep living the life. Let Ryan feel safe. And in the meantime, document everything, build the financial picture, and let Diane position the filing to protect Claire and the baby completely. What about the affair? I asked. We were in my apartment, eating the Thai food we'd been ordering from the same place since college. Claire had switched to the tofu option since the pregnancy. Do you know who it is? Not yet, she said. Diane says it matters less than the financial picture for the filing. But yes, I want to know. I can find out, I said. She looked at me. How? I plan corporate events, Claire. I know half the assistants in Midtown. Give me a week. She gave me a week. It took 4 days. Her name was Kendall Voss, 29, associate at a different firm in Ryan's building, the kind of professionally pretty that photographed well on LinkedIn. And they'd apparently been seeing each other for 8 months, which meant it started 3 months into Claire's pregnancy, a detail that landed in my chest like something physical when I found it out. I told Claire over the phone. There was a silence. 8 months, she said. Yes. Another silence. Okay, she said. Send me what you have. I sent it. She forwarded it to Diane. The 11 weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. I had lunch with Claire every week, sometimes at her apartment, sometimes at a place near her office where she was still working 3 days a week, the kind of stubborn professionalism that was completely her. She looked good, genuinely. The pregnancy suited her in the way it does some women, a particular quality of being fully inhabited. She laughed at things. She talked about the baby, that she was planning a shower that she'd eventually cancel, and underneath all of it, she was building the case. Ryan had no idea. I know that because I saw them together twice in those 11 weeks. Once at a dinner party at a mutual friend's apartment in Brooklyn. Ryan with his hand at the small of Claire's back, performing the attentive husband with the ease of someone who'd been doing it long enough that it barely required effort. Once at brunch, the three of us, where he ordered for Claire without asking what she wanted, and she let him without commenting. And I sat across the table, watching this man who thought he was managing everything, and felt something cold and patient settle in my own stomach. He had no idea. The Thursday I'm telling you about was week 11. Diane had filed the papers the previous Tuesday. In the financial documentation was complete. Claire had worked with a forensic accountant Diane recommended to build a picture of their shared assets that was, by all accounts, thorough enough to be considered a work of art. The asset protection moves Claire had made over the previous months, guided by Diane, had been careful and legal, and had positioned her and the baby in a way that Ryan's eventual counter wouldn't be able to significantly touch. Ryan had been taking Kendall to lunch at a restaurant called Clement in Midtown every Thursday for at least 6 weeks. I knew this because one of the assistants I'd talked to had mentioned it. Same table, same time, expensed as client entertainment. Claire chose the time and place. Diane handled the process server. To the security detail, 3 men from a firm Diane used for exactly this kind of delivery, the kind that ensured the papers couldn't be claimed as undelivered or the moment disputed, was Claire's specific request. He needs to understand it's real, she told me the night before. We were in her nursery, the room she'd been putting together herself, the crib assembled, the walls painted the soft yellow she'd chosen. She was sitting in the glider she'd ordered, hands on her belly, completely composed. He's the kind of man who talks his way out of things. I need him to be in a room where that's not an option. Are you sure you don't want to be there? I said. No, she said. I don't want to see his face. A pause. But I want someone there who I trust. She looked at me. Oh, I said. You don't have to, she said. Claire. I sat down on the floor next to the glider because there wasn't another chair. Obviously I'm going, she smiled. The first real one I'd seen in 11 weeks. Table for one, she said. 2 tables over. Order the salmon. Diane says it's good. So that's how I ended up at Clement on a Thursday at 12:30. The salmon was in fact excellent. Ryan and Kendall arrived at 12:40. He had his hand at the small of her back, the same gesture he used with Claire, I noticed, and filed away. They were laughing about something before they'd even sat down. He ordered the Bordeaux without looking at the list, the casual authority of a man who ate here often enough to have a usual. I watched them over my salmon and my sparkling water and thought about Claire in the nursery the night before. He's sitting in the glider with her hands on her belly, completely certain of what she was doing. The waiter arrived at 12:46. Brown envelope, full legal name, typed and official. The 3 men in dark suits positioned themselves before Ryan had finished opening it. I don't know exactly when he understood what he was reading, but I know the exact moment the understanding arrived, because his face did the thing I mentioned, the 3-stage collapse of a man watching the building come down. Confusion, recognition, the specific look of a person realizing they have been, at every turn, 3 moves behind someone they underestimated. Kendall's hand moved to his arm. He looked at it, then at her, then at the papers, then at the 3 men. Mr. Harmon, the one in the middle, said again, "You've been served." The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Ryan Harmon sat in the silence of a room full of people who had just watched his life rearrange itself, holding papers his pregnant wife had spent 11 weeks building, with nowhere to go and no version of his charm that was going to work on this particular audience. I picked up my sparkling water. I thought, Claire, you brilliant, patient, devastating woman. I took a sip. I stayed at my table for another 20 minutes after the papers were delivered, not because I needed to. The salmon was gone, the sparkling water was mostly ice, and there was nothing left for me to do in that restaurant except exist as a witness to something that was still happening around me, whether I was watching or not. I stayed because I wanted to see what Ryan Harmon did when the performance had nowhere to go. He didn't make a scene. That surprised me a little. I'd expected something loud, the particular explosion of a man whose control had been removed publicly. But Ryan was too calculated for that. He sat very still for about 30 seconds after the men in dark suits confirmed the service and stepped back to a respectful distance, far enough to give the illusion of privacy, close enough to be a reminder. Then he looked at Kendall. She was watching him with an expression I recognized from the outside of situations I'd never been in personally. The look of a person recalibrating their understanding of exactly what they'd gotten themselves into. Her hand was no longer on his arm. It was in her lap. "I need to make a call," Ryan said. His voice was controlled, that careful, even tone of a man who was used to being the one who managed crisis rather than the one in the middle of it. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, automatic, the muscle memory of a man who always made sure he looked right before he walked anywhere. Walked toward the front of the restaurant with his phone already at his ear. His lawyer, I assumed. Kendall sat at the table alone with the Bordeaux and the breadbasket and the papers Ryan had left face down next to his plate. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she looked across the restaurant. Her eyes moved around the room with the hyper-awareness of someone who understood suddenly that they were in a room full of people who had seen something. Her gaze passed over me without stopping. I was just a woman having lunch alone, nobody, and moved on. I left cash on the table, put on my coat, walked out. On the sidewalk, I texted Claire a single word, "Done." Her reply came back in under a minute, "Thank you." Then, 30 seconds later, "Come over tonight." "Already planning on it," I sent back. I put my phone in my pocket and walked 3 blocks before I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. The cold November air off the buildings, the noise of Midtown at 1 in the afternoon, the ordinary indifferent city doing what it always did while someone's life rearranged itself on a side street. I thought about Claire in that restaurant 4 years ago, when Ryan proposed over the same Bordeaux he'd just been drinking with someone else. I walked faster. Claire was in the kitchen when I got to the apartment that evening. She was making pasta, the simple kind, on olive oil and garlic and the good parmesan she kept in the back of the fridge, moving through the kitchen with the careful efficiency of late pregnancy, the particular way she'd learned to navigate her own body over the last few months. Mary J. Blige was playing from the small speaker on the counter, low enough to be atmosphere rather than sound. I'd known Claire long enough to understand her music as a language. Mary J. meant she was processing something real. Jill Scott meant she was okay. The fact that it was Mary J. tonight told me more than any text could have. She looked up when I came in. "How was the salmon?" she said. "Genuinely excellent," I said. Diane was right. She almost smiled. Almost. I sat at the kitchen island while she finished the pasta, and I told her everything, not the papers. She'd get the official confirmation from Diane. Just what I saw. Ryan's face, the 3 stages, the way he buttoned his jacket before he walked away to call his lawyer, the muscle memory of a man trying to maintain the performance even when the audience had stopped watching. Claire listened with her back to me, stirring the pasta, the wooden spoon moving in slow circles. "And Kendall," she said. "Left alone at the table," I said. She looked like someone who just realized the map she'd been following was for a different country. Claire was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said. "Not cruel, just honest." The one-word verdict of a woman who had processed her feelings about Kendall Voss privately and thoroughly and had arrived somewhere clear. She plated the pasta, set a bowl in front of me, sat on the other stool across the island, and the one she'd been using more lately because the bar height was easier to get in and out of than the low chairs. We ate. The apartment was the same as it always was. Warm, carefully made, the accumulated evidence of a life Claire had built with her own attention. The books on the shelves she'd actually read, the art on the walls she'd chosen slowly over years, the throw blanket on the couch in the particular green that she'd found at a small shop in the West Village and carried home on the subway because she couldn't wait for shipping. Ryan had lived here too. For 3 years he'd moved through these rooms and eaten at this table and slept in the bedroom down the hall. His presence was in the apartment the way a smell lingers, not visible, just present. Something you noticed without being able to point at it. "Has he called?" I asked. Twice," she said. I didn't answer. "Are you going to?" Diane says I don't have to. She broke off a piece of bread. "I'm not going to." "Okay." "He'll have had a conversation with his lawyer by now," she said. The analytical part of her brain working, which I knew was also how she managed to stay composed. She turned the situation into a problem with variables and stayed in the problem rather than the feeling. "He'll understand the filing. He'll see the asset documentation." She paused. "He'll know how long I've been planning this. How do you feel about that?" She looked at her pasta for a moment. "I want him to understand that I wasn't surprised," she said, "that I wasn't sitting here devastated while he made his plans. I want him to know that the gap between when he started this and when I found out and when I acted, that gap was mine. I used it." She looked up at me. "I need him to know he didn't get away with it quietly." There was something in her voice that wasn't anger exactly. Something older and more settled than anger. The feeling of a woman who had been underestimated and had made something useful out of that underestimation. "He knows," I said. She nodded, picked up her fork. We finished dinner, cleaned up together the way we'd been cleaning up together since the dorm kitchen on Commonwealth Avenue. Mary J. gave way to India Airy, which was a shift, something lighter underneath, something that was beginning to look forward rather than just through. I noticed. Didn't say anything about noticing, but I noticed. Over the next 3 weeks, Ryan tried 4 approaches. I know this because Claire told me, and because Diane relayed the communications through the proper channels, and because Ryan was predictable in the way of men who had always been able to talk their way through things and couldn't quite accept that the audience had changed. First, the apology call. He left a voicemail. Claire didn't listen to it. Diane did, professionally, and summarized it as containing nothing legally relevant and a significant amount of what Diane described in her careful attorney language as performative remorse. Second, the letter, handwritten, delivered to the apartment. Claire handed it to Diane unopened. Third, he appeared at the apartment on a Saturday morning. Claire saw him on the intercom camera and called Diane. who called the relevant people. And Ryan was reminded through official channels that contact outside of legal representation was not appropriate at this stage of proceedings. Fourth, and this was the one that told me everything I needed to know about who Ryan Harmon actually was. He called me. My phone rang on a Tuesday evening. Unknown number, which I answered by habit. His voice. Jess, smooth, careful, already building something. I know you're in the middle of this, and I'm not trying to put you in a bad position. Ryan, I said. Stop. A pause. I just want to understand what happened, he said. If you could just tell me how long she's... You should talk to your lawyer, I said. Jess, I'm going to hang up now, I said, and I'm going to tell Claire you called, and then I'm going to tell Diane. A pause. And you should know that this call, depending on what your legal team has advised, may not have been a good idea. Silence. I hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment, feeling the particular cold of realizing that a person you'd shared meals with and been in the same rooms as, and treated as real was, at bottom, someone who would use whoever was closest to get what he needed. I called Claire. He called me, I said when she answered. A pause. What did he say? He wanted to know how long you'd been planning it. I paused. I hung up. Thank you, she said. Are you okay? I'm fine. A pause, the kind that had something behind it. Jess, can you come over tomorrow? I need to tell you something. Something in her voice. What kind of something? I said carefully. The kind Diane told me to keep quiet about until the filing was in better shape, she said. Nah, it's in better shape now. My chest tightened slightly. I'll be there at 10, I said. 9, she said. Bring the Thai place. I brought the Thai food. We were at the kitchen table at 9 the next morning. Pad see ew and spring rolls at an hour that had nothing to do with lunch, which was something we'd been doing since college, and I hoped we'd still be doing at 80. Claire wrapped both hands around her tea, looked at me across the table. The apartment, she said. What about it? It's mine, she said it quietly. Has been for 14 months. I put down my spring roll. What? Ryan wanted to buy into a fund 18 months ago. Private equity, one of his colleagues. She looked at her tea. He needed liquidity. He asked me to put the apartment solely in my name for the financing. Something about debt-to-asset ratios on the fund paperwork. I didn't question it at the time. I just did it. I stared at her. He forgot, she said. Simply. He forgot to transfer it back. Or he didn't bother. Or he assumed I wouldn't notice what I was holding. She looked up at me. Diane noticed. The kitchen was very quiet. Claire, I said. The prenup he had me sign 3 weeks before the wedding, she said. Diane found a drafting error in the asset classification clause. It's being challenged. She paused. The fund Ryan bought into? 3 of the assets it holds were acquired during the marriage. Diane's got a forensic accountant who can trace the funding source. I looked at my best friend across the kitchen table, 7 months pregnant, hands around her tea, and completely still. He forgot the apartment, I said. He forgot the apartment, she said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the most Claire thing in the world, that the thing that saved her was something she'd been sitting on for 14 months without knowing it was a weapon. She smiled, the real one, the one that meant she was going to be okay. He thought he was smarter than everyone, I said. He thought he was smarter than me, she said. That's different. Outside the Upper West Side window, New York was doing its morning thing. Loud, cold, indifferent, alive. I picked up my spring roll. Tell me everything Diane said, I said. Claire told me everything. Ryan's lawyer called Diane on a Thursday. I know this because Claire called me approximately 45 minutes after Diane called her, and which was how information moved in our world. Diane, to Claire, to me, in a chain that had become the reliable rhythm of the last several weeks. I was in the middle of finalizing a venue contract for a corporate gala when my phone lit up with Claire's name, and I put everything down immediately. His lawyer made an offer, Claire said. No hello. We were past hello at this point. Already? It had been 3 weeks since the service. That's fast. Diane says it means the apartment situation rattled them. Claire's voice was the analytical one, the one she used when she was working the problem. They want to settle before discovery gets any deeper into the fund assets. What's the offer? She told me. I sat back in my chair. That's not enough, she said. That's not close. What does Diane say? She says decline and let discovery proceed. A pause. She says the fund asset tracing is going to turn up things Ryan's team would very much prefer stayed unturned. My chest did the thing it did when a situation that was already serious revealed itself to be more serious. What kind of things? She didn't specify, Claire said. She said she'd know more in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I thought about Claire living in that apartment for 2 more weeks with the particular weight of what was being unearthed, the baby getting closer, Ryan somewhere on the other side of lawyers and legal channels doing whatever men like Ryan did when the ground shifted under them. How are you sleeping? I asked. A pause that told me everything. Claire. I'm fine, she said. The baby's fine. Diane's handling everything that needs handling. A beat. I just need this to be over. I know. I need to have my daughter and know what my life looks like, she said. That's all I need right now. Her daughter. She'd told me the gender 2 weeks ago. Just me. Not a public announcement. Not a shower reveal. Just a phone call at 9 in the morning where she said, "It's a girl." And I had to sit down on the floor of my office for approximately 4 minutes. She's going to be fine, I said. You're both going to be fine. I know, Claire said. She said it the way she said things she'd already decided were true. I just need to get through the next part. The next part arrived faster than 2 weeks. It arrived, specifically, on a Tuesday morning when Diane called Claire with the forensic accountant's preliminary findings. And Claire called me before she'd even finished processing what Diane had told her, which was how I knew it was significant. Claire didn't call mid-process. She called when she was ready to talk. The fact that she called before she was ready meant something had genuinely landed differently than expected. I was at her apartment in 20 minutes. She was at the kitchen table, tea in front of her, untouched. Hands flat on the table, not around the mug. The body language of someone who needed to feel a solid surface. I sat down across from her. Tell me, I said. The fund, she said. The private equity fund Ryan bought into 18 months ago. She looked at the table. Diane's accountant found the funding source for his stake. And? It came from a joint account, Claire said. One I didn't know existed. My hands went very still on the table. Ryan opened it 4 years ago, she said, before we got married. He's been moving small amounts into it consistently. From his salary, from bonuses, a transfer here and there. She looked up at me. Diane says it's structured specifically to look like regular financial activity. Nothing that would trigger a flag unless you were looking for it. How much? I said. She told me. The kitchen was very quiet for a moment. He was building an exit fund, I said. Yes. Claire's voice was very even, too even. Diane says it means the affair wasn't impulsive, and the financial preparation preceded the relationship with Kendall by at least 2 years. She picked up her tea finally, set it back down without drinking. He was planning to leave before he started seeing her. She may have just been the timing. I thought about that. About Ryan at that dinner 4 years ago, asking good questions and following up, doing all the things that look like paying attention, about the proposal, about the wedding 3 weeks after the prenup that had a drafting error his lawyer apparently hadn't caught, about 14 months of small transfers into an account Claire didn't know existed. He planned all of this, I said. He planned all of this, she said. We sat with that for a moment. Diane can work with this, I said. It wasn't a question. Diane is very, very calm about it, Claire said. Which means she's very, very not calm about it in the way that matters. She looked at me. She says this changes the settlement picture significantly. How significantly? She used the phrase, fundamentally. I breathed out slowly. Outside the window, the city was doing its late morning thing. A siren somewhere. The building's HVAC. The particular layer of sound that was always there in New York if you stopped talking long enough to hear it. Claire, I said, how are you actually? She looked at her tea, at the table, at the window. I think I'm angry, she said, like she was identifying something she'd just located. I've been so focused on the plan that I haven't let myself be angry. She paused. 4 years. He was planning for 4 years. Yeah, I said. While I was... She stopped. Her jaw tightened. Bae, I was building a life with him. I was choosing furniture and talking about children and believing. She stopped again. Her hand moved to her belly. I didn't say anything. Some things needed room, not response. She's going to be okay, Claire said after a moment. To me, but also to herself, and also to her daughter. She's going to have everything she needs and none of the things that would have hurt her. She looked up. Her eyes were bright, but dry. And Ryan is going to spend the next several years dealing with the consequences of thinking I wasn't paying attention. I felt something in my chest expand. The particular feeling of watching someone you love step into who they actually are. Diane's next move? I said. She's filing an amended claim, Claire said, including the hidden account, including the fund stake, including a request for full financial disclosure going back 5 years. She paused. Ryan's lawyer is going to have a very unpleasant week. Ryan showed up at my office on a Wednesday. I want to be clear that I did not see this coming and had no plan for it. My office was in a building on 7th Avenue. Not a secret. It was on my website, and Ryan apparently decided that since the apartment approach had been shut down through official channels, I was the next available access point. My assistant Maya came to my office door with an expression that told me something unusual was happening in the reception area. There's a man here, she said. He says he's a friend. He doesn't have an appointment. I knew before she described him. Tell him I'll be out in 5 minutes, I said. I called Claire first. 30 seconds. Ash, Ryan's at my office, I said. Don't tell him anything, she said immediately. Jess, I know, I said. I'm going to hear what he says, and I'm going to tell Diane. A pause. Should I not go out there? A beat. Go, she said. I want to know what he thinks is worth trying at this point. I went. Ryan was in the reception area. He looked different from the restaurant. The controlled surface was still there, but underneath it, something was working hard to stay contained. His jaw was tight in a way I hadn't seen before. His hands were in his pockets. Jess. He said my name like we were still the version of ourselves that had eaten dinner together at Brooklyn dinner parties. Thanks for coming out. What do you need, Ryan? He looked at Maya, who was at her desk pretending to work. "Can we can talk here," I said. I have a meeting in 15 minutes." I didn't have a meeting. He didn't know that. He looked at me for a moment, recalibrating. "I need you to understand something," he said. Lower now. "What Diane Park is doing, the amended claim, the financial disclosure request, she's building a case that's going to drag this out for a year, maybe 2. He looked at me steadily. "That's not good for Claire. It's not good for the baby. I want to resolve this quickly and fairly and get everyone on with their lives." "That sounds like something you should say to Diane," I said. "Diane isn't interested in quick," he said. "Diane is interested in billable hours." "Diane is interested in Claire's interests," I said. "Which is what Claire is paying her for." Something moved across his face. Frustration, controlled. "Jess, you've known me for 3 years. I've known Claire for 15, I said. He stopped. "Ryan." I kept my voice even, professional. The same tone I used with difficult vendors and clients who needed boundaries. "I'm not an access point. I'm not a back channel. I'm her best friend, and I'm going to tell her every word of this conversation." I looked at him directly. "If you want to resolve this quickly and fairly, make a fair offer through Diane. That's the only channel that exists right now." His jaw tightened. "She's making this harder than it needs to be." "She's making it exactly as hard as what you did requires," I said. Silence. He looked at me for a long moment, something in his face that might have been the beginning of understanding, or might have been the frustration of a man who had run out of approaches. My meeting's in 10 minutes, I said. "I'll show you out." He left. I went back to my office, called Diane directly, and told her everything, word for word. She listened without interrupting. "Good," she said when I finished. "That's exactly what I needed to know." "What does it tell you?" "That they've seen the amended claim, and they're concerned," she said. "A man who was confident would wait for the formal process." A pause. "He's not confident." I thought about Ryan in my reception area, jaw tight, hands in his pockets, trying the last approach available to him. I thought about Claire at her kitchen table with her hands flat on a solid surface. "How much longer?" I said. "Not long," Diane said. "He's going to make a real offer soon. They always do, at this stage." She was right. He made the offer 4 days later. I was with Claire when Diane called with the number. We were in the nursery, the room that had been coming together over the last few weeks, the crib assembled, the soft yellow walls. A bookshelf Claire had started filling with the books she planned to read out loud starting from the first week. She'd asked me to help hang some shelves, which was how we spent Saturday mornings now. Practical, forward-facing, building the room for the person who was coming. Claire was sitting in the glider when her phone rang. She answered, listened, said almost nothing for 2 minutes. Then she said, "I'll call you back in an hour." She set the phone in her lap. I looked at her from the stepladder. "Well," I said. She looked at the nursery, at the yellow walls, at the shelf I was halfway through hanging. "It's real this time," she said. How real?" She told me the number. I came down off the stepladder. "Diane's recommendation," I said. "She says it addresses the apartment, the hidden account, the fund stake, and full child support through college." Claire looked at her hands. "She says it's proportional." "What do you say?" She was quiet for a moment. In the soft yellow room, with the books on the half-built shelf, and the crib in the corner, and the city outside the window that had been hers long before it was his. "I say yes," she said. "I want to be done." She looked up at me. "I want to set up this room and have my daughter and not spend the next 2 years in a legal fight." She put her hand on her belly. I want to be done, Jess." "Then be done," I said. She called Diane back in 43 minutes. Claire's daughter was born on a Sunday morning in early winter. I was in the waiting room for 6 hours. Bad coffee, a magazine I read without retaining a single word, the particular suspended quality of time in hospital waiting rooms where the clock moves at a different speed than everywhere else. Claire's mother, Linda, flew in from Boston and sat beside me for the last 3 hours. A small woman with Claire's same stillness and a rosary, she worked through her fingers without seeming to notice she was doing it. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. When the nurse came out and said everything had gone well and Claire was asking for me, Linda squeezed my hand once and nodded toward the door, like she was sending me somewhere important. I went. Claire was in the bed with her daughter on her chest, the baby wrapped in the standard hospital blanket, impossibly small, her face the particular compressed newborn look that somehow managed to be entirely itself already. Claire was exhausted in a way that went past the word, the specific used-up quality of a body that had done the hardest thing. But her face, looking down at that baby, was something I don't have a precise word for. Complete, maybe, like a sentence that had found its end. "Hey," I said from the doorway. She looked up. "Hey." I came in, sat in the chair beside the bed, looked at the baby. "She's here," Claire said, like she was still slightly surprised by it. "She's here," I said. We stayed like that for a while, me in the chair, Claire in the bed, the baby between us doing the slow, extraordinary work of being new. The hospital room hummed with its machines. Outside the window, in the city was doing whatever the city did on a Sunday in early winter, indifferent and alive. "Ryan knows," Claire said, not a question. "Diane notified his legal team," I said. "As required." "Did he respond?" "A card," I said, "through Diane's office." Claire looked at her daughter. "Okay," she said, "that was all. Just okay." The word that had carried everything for the last several months, that had meant I'm processing, and I'm building, and I'm still here, and now meant something closer to I know, and it doesn't change anything that matters. She named her daughter May, Claire May Mercer, on the birth certificate. Mercer, not Harmon, which required a specific legal step that Diane had helped her prepare for in advance, and which was, as far as I was concerned, one of the most precise things Claire had ever done. Yet the settlement finalized 6 weeks after May was born. I know the timeline because Claire called me the morning Diane sent the final documents for signature, and I drove across town and sat at the kitchen table while she read through everything one more time. Not because she didn't trust Diane, but because she was the kind of person who read things herself before she signed them. Always had been, and some things about her hadn't changed through any of this. She read for 40 minutes. I made coffee. May was asleep in the bassinet in the living room, doing the concentrated sleeping of a 6-week-old who had not yet understood that nighttime was for sleeping and was keeping her options open. Claire signed the documents at 11:14 in the morning. She set the pen down, looked at the signed pages, looked at me. "It's done," she said. I expected something more. Tears, maybe, or the release of something held long. But Claire just sat there for a moment, with her hands on the table, the way she'd been sitting the morning she found out about the hidden account, the solid surface posture, grounding herself in something real. Then she stood up, went to the living room, picked up May with the practiced confidence of 6 weeks of learning how, the baby settling against her shoulder with the easy trust of someone who knew exactly where safety was. She came back to the kitchen doorway, looked at me. I want pancakes, she said. I laughed. Actual, startled, genuine. Right now. From that place on Columbus that does the ones with the lemon ricotta. She shifted May slightly. I've been thinking about them for 3 weeks. Diane said I couldn't celebrate until everything was signed. That does sound like something Diane would say, I said. I got my coat. Claire put May in the carrier she'd been learning to use, the baby tucked against her chest, facing in, making the small, compressed face she made when she was working on being awake. We walked 3 blocks to the place on Columbus in the cold winter morning, got a table by the window, ordered the lemon ricotta pancakes and coffee and orange juice, and sat in the pale winter light with May between us. The pancakes were genuinely excellent. What I haven't told you yet is what happened with Ryan, not the legal part. The settlement covered that cleanly in the way Diane handled things. What I mean is the other part, the part that didn't show up in any document. Ryan called Claire once after the settlement finalized. She told me about it 2 weeks later, matter-of-factly, the way she reported things that had been filed and processed internally before she brought them out into conversation. We were in the nursery, May in the crib, doing the concentrated staring at the ceiling that 6-week-olds did, Claire in the glider, me on the floor because the floor had become my habitual position in this room. He called on a Thursday evening, she said. What did he say? He said he was sorry. She rocked the glider slightly. He said he'd made choices he couldn't undo, and he was sorry. A pause. He asked if he could be involved with May. My chest tightened. What did you say? I told him that was a conversation for when May was old enough to have any input into it, she said, and that until then, he could communicate through the channels Diane set up for co-parenting logistics. She looked at the crib. He didn't push. Do you believe he's sorry? I said. She was quiet for a moment. I think he's sorry it didn't work the way he planned, she said carefully. I think he's sorry about May, genuinely. I think he looked at what he lost and felt the loss of it. She paused. Whether that's the same thing as being sorry for what he did, I don't know. I'm not sure it matters anymore. I thought about that. Does it bother you, I said, that he called? It bothered me for about 20 minutes, she said. Then May woke up and needed to eat, and I forgot about it for 4 hours. She almost smiled. That's what she does. She keeps interrupting my ability to stay inside the bad things. I looked at the baby in the crib, small, serious. He's staring at the ceiling with the focused attention of a person who had recently arrived and was busy taking inventory of the world. Smart girl, I said. She's very smart, Claire said. She already knows her own mind. It was Kendall Voss who surprised me. I hadn't thought about Kendall much after the restaurant. She'd been peripheral in the whole thing, a variable in someone else's plan rather than a person I'd spent much time considering. I knew she'd been in the relationship for 8 months. I knew she'd been sitting at that table when the papers arrived. I knew she'd been left alone with the Bordeaux and the breadbasket while Ryan went to call his lawyer. What I didn't know was what she did after. I found out on a Thursday in early spring, which was a seasonally appropriate time for things to arrive that you weren't expecting. No, I was having lunch at a place near my office, a quick solo lunch between meetings, the kind where you sit at the counter and eat fast and go back. The woman who sat down 2 seats over was familiar before I placed her. Kendall Voss, in person, shorter than she'd seemed across the restaurant that day, wearing a work blazer and the expression of someone who had been thinking about something for a long time and had decided to stop thinking and do it instead. She looked at me the same moment I looked at her. We both went still. You were there, she said, at Clement, that day. It wasn't a question. Either she'd seen me, or she'd figured it out later. I said. She looked at the counter in front of her. I didn't know he was married when we started, she said. I want you to know that. I looked at her. He told me he was separated, she said. That the marriage was over in every way that mattered, and they were just sorting out the details. She picked up the menu, put it down. I found out she was pregnant when the papers were served. Her voice was very controlled. I didn't know until that moment. I thought about the table at Clement, her hand moving from his arm to her lap, the look on her face, which I'd read as recalibrating, but which was, I now understood, something more specific than that. Someone finding out that the story they'd been living in was not the story that was actually happening. What did you do? I said. I left, she said. That day. I picked up my bag, and I walked out while he was still on the phone with his lawyer. She looked at the counter. I haven't spoken to him since. The lunch counter was doing its busy Thursday thing around us. Plates, conversation, the smell of coffee, and something warm from the kitchen. I'm not telling you this, so you'll tell her I'm a good person, Kendall said. I don't know if I'm a good person. I made choices without asking enough questions. She looked at me directly for the first time. I just wanted someone who was connected to the situation to know that I wouldn't have... She stopped. If I'd known about the pregnancy, I would have walked away. I looked at this woman who had sat across from Ryan Harmon for 8 months, believing a story he'd constructed carefully enough that she hadn't questioned it. Who had found out the truth in a restaurant in Midtown in front of a room full of people. Who had picked up her bag and walked out the same day and not looked back. I'll tell her, I said, if that's what you want. She thought about it. Only if you think it matters to her, she said. If it doesn't matter, don't bother. She ordered a coffee. I finished my lunch. We didn't talk again. I told Claire. We were at the kitchen table, the same one, always the same one. That table had held more of our real life than any other surface. May was in the bouncer beside the table, doing the concentrated staring thing. This time at a mobile, Claire had hung above it. I told her everything Kendall had said. Claire listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. She walked out the same day, Claire said. Yes. Another pause. He told her he was separated. Yes. Claire looked at May. At the mobile turning slowly above the bouncer. At her daughter, who had her eyes, and, already, her particular quality of focused attention. That's 2 of us he lied to simultaneously, she said finally, running parallel tracks. Yes, and she found out in the worst possible way. Yes. Claire was quiet for a long moment, something working through her that I could see in the set of her jaw and the way her hands were flat on the table again. I don't forgive him, she said. I want to be clear about that. None of this changes what he did. I know, I said, but I don't. She stopped. I don't have the energy to carry hatred for Kendall, she said. She got lied to, too. She looked at May. The person who deserves all of it, she said, is the person who built the whole thing. I nodded. And he's living with that, she said. Whatever that looks like for him. She picked up her coffee. That's enough. The hardest month wasn't the one with the lawyers. It wasn't the month of the service, or the month of the hidden account discovery, or the month of Ryan showing up at my office with his jaw tight and his hands in his pockets. It wasn't even the month May was born, which was hard in the physical way that the hardest things are hard, concrete, demanding, leaving no room for anything other than itself. The hardest month was the one after the settlement, the one where everything stopped. I didn't fully understand this until Claire told me about it, and she didn't tell me about it until she was through it, which was how she handled things, processing privately and then bringing me in after. And which I had learned over 15 years to accept rather than push against. She'd come to me when she was ready. She always did. She called on a Tuesday evening in late winter. May was 8 weeks old. Claire's voice on the phone had a quality I recognized from college, from the 2 or 3 times in our friendship when something had genuinely knocked her sideways. Not the analytical voice, not the working the problem voice, the underneath voice. "Can you come over?" she said. I was there in 20 minutes. The apartment was quieter than usual when I arrived. May was asleep. The lights were low. Claire was on the couch in the particular folded posture of a woman who had been sitting there for a while, knees pulled up, the green throw blanket from the West Village shop around her shoulders, a cold cup of tea on the table in front of her that she'd clearly forgotten about. I sat in the chair across from her, didn't say anything, waited. "I've been crying for 3 days," she said, off and on, mostly when May's asleep. "Okay," I said. "Not because I regret anything," she said quickly. "I don't regret the filing, or the settlement, or any of it. I know I did the right things." She looked at her hands. "I think I was so focused on the plan for so long that I didn't let myself feel most of it while it was happening. And now the plan is over, and May is here, and it's quiet, and..." She stopped. "It's all landing," I said. "All at once," she said. 4 years of marriage, the proposal, the wedding, the pregnancy, which I thought we both wanted." Her voice caught slightly, then steadied. 15 months of him building an exit while I was... She pressed her lips together. "I keep thinking about who I was in those 15 months, what I was doing, what I believed." She looked at the throw blanket. "I was happy, Jess. I was genuinely happy, and it was built on something that wasn't real." The apartment was very quiet around us. May's small breathing sounds from the bassinet in the bedroom, the building's heat, the faint sound of the city below. The happiness was real, I said. She looked up. "What he was doing was not real," I said. "But your experience of those years, the things you felt and built and believed, those were yours. He can't take that." I paused. "He was lying. You weren't." She was quiet for a moment. "I keep trying to find the place where I should have seen it," she said. "The thing I missed. The sign I should have read differently." "Claire, I know," she said. I know it's not about what I missed. I know." She pulled the blanket tighter. "I just can't stop my brain from looking." "That's going to stop eventually," I said. "Not all at once, just gradually." "How do you know?" "Because I know you," I said. "You've never stayed lost for long." She looked at me across the dim living room, the underneath version of her face, the one without the composure, without the analytical remove, just the person underneath all of it who had been through something real and was sitting with the real size of it. "I miss having a partner," she said quietly. "Not him. I don't miss him, specifically. I miss the idea of what I thought we were." She looked at May's bassinet through the bedroom doorway. "Yeah, I'm gonna raise her alone." "You're not alone," I said. "You know what I mean." "I do," I said. "And I also mean what I said." She looked at the bassinet for a long moment, the small, steady breathing. "She's so good," Claire said. Her voice shifted, something warm moving into it, the particular quality that appeared in her voice now whenever she talked about May. She looks at me, and she's so completely certain I'm the right person. She has no doubts at all. She almost smiled. I'm trying to have her confidence. Give it time, I said. You'll catch up. She went back to therapy. She'd seen someone briefly in her mid-20s after her father died, and had found it useful in the specific way she found most things useful, as a tool for doing something that needed doing. She found a therapist named Dr. Okonkwo, a woman in her mid-40s with an office in the West 80s, and started going on Tuesday mornings after dropping May at the part-time nanny she'd hired. The one practical concession she'd made to the reality of being a single parent with a demanding career she was preparing to return to. She didn't tell me much about the sessions. That was private, and I respected it. What I noticed was subtler. The way her voice changed over the following weeks. The way she started talking about the next things rather than the last things. The way she began, gradually, to occupy the apartment differently, moving furniture slightly, buying a new lamp for the living room, making the space more fully hers in ways that were small and accumulative. Ryan's presence was fading from the rooms, and not because she was erasing him. She didn't do anything dramatic, no throwing out of photographs or repainting of walls. It was quieter than that. The space was just slowly, steadily becoming what it had always been underneath, Claire's. I had my own version of a hard month, which I haven't told you about, because this isn't my story, but I'll tell you the part that matters. I'd been so focused on Claire for so long, the 11 weeks of planning, the delivery, the birth, the settlement, that I hadn't fully registered what carrying all of it had cost me until it was over. I didn't have Claire's particular grief, but I had my own version of the aftermath, the come down of sustained vigilance, the strange flatness that follows a long period of being needed urgently. I went for a run one Saturday morning in early spring, the first genuinely warm day after a long winter, and somewhere in the middle of it, in Central Park, with the trees doing their tentative new leaf thing. I started crying and didn't stop for about a mile. Not for anything specific, for all of it. For Claire in the nursery on the night before the service, in the glider with her hands on her belly, for the rosary in Linda's hands in the hospital waiting room, for the lemon ricotta pancakes on the morning the settlement was signed, for the way May looked at Claire with complete certainty, for the version of things that could have been if Ryan had been different, if the story had been what Claire believed it was. I let myself cry for a mile, and then I stopped and walked for a bit, and then I ran the rest of the loop. That was my version of it. Then the thing that shifted for Claire came from an unexpected direction. It wasn't therapy, though therapy helped. It wasn't time, though time was doing what it did. It was a Tuesday morning, 10 weeks after the settlement, when she went back to work. She'd negotiated a re-entry arrangement with her firm, 3 days a week to start, building back to full-time over a month. She texted me from the office at 9:15 on her first day back. Remembered my password on the second try. This feels like winning. I laughed alone in my office and sent back, "You're back." "I'm back," she replied. And that was the thing, actually. That was the shift. Not a dramatic moment, just a Tuesday morning, a password, a woman returning to the part of herself that had been waiting. She called me that evening from the kitchen, May and the bouncer on the counter, making dinner with one hand, and her phone propped against the backsplash. Pasta again, olive oil and garlic, the simple kind, the one she made when she needed her hands busy and her brain quiet. "How was it?" I said. "Good," she said. And I could hear it, the real version, not the managed one. "Really good. My brain woke up." She paused. "I'd missed it." "I know," I said. Jess. Her voice shifted slightly. I want to tell you something. Okay. I've been thinking about what you said, she said. About the happiness being real. About it being mine. The pasta water was boiling in the background. I've been sitting with it for a few weeks and I think you're right. I think I needed to mourn the story I thought I was in. And I think I'm done mourning it. A pause. I'm ready to be in the actual story. The one that's real. My chest did the expanding thing again. Which is, I said. Me, she said. May, my work. This apartment. She paused. You, obviously, you're a given. Obviously, I said. The next chapter, she said. Whatever that is. The pasta water boiled. May made a sound from the bouncer. The kitchen, in the background of the call, was warm and ordinary, and full of the small, persistent sounds of a life going on. I'm excited for it, I said. Me too, she said, like she meant it. Like it was the truest thing she'd said in months. She did mean it. I could tell. Spring arrived the way it always did in New York. Not gently, not all at once, but in arguments with winter. Warm days followed by cold ones, with the city lurching towards something better in fits and starts, until one morning you walked outside and realized it had quietly arrived while you were busy with other things. Claire's version of spring that year had a particular quality I'd been watching build for weeks, a loosening, a forward lean, the gradual return of the woman I'd known for 15 years who moved through the world with her full weight, rather than the careful, managed version she'd been running on since the previous fall. May was 3 months old. She had Claire's eyes, and, increasingly, Claire's expressions, the focused stare, the particular tilt of the head when something interested her. She had started smiling, the real smiles, not the reflex ones, the ones that arrived when she recognized Claire's face or heard Claire's voice. And watching Claire receive those smiles was one of the better things I'd seen in recent memory. Claire had gone back to work full-time 3 weeks ahead of her own schedule, which surprised nobody who knew her. She'd picked up 2 new client accounts in her first month back, which surprised her colleagues and nobody who knew her. She was, in the specific and particular way of people who have been through something real and come out the other side of it, more herself than she had been before. I need to tell you about the morning the last thing happened. Not a dramatic thing. Not a confrontation or a revelation or anything that looked, from the outside, like a significant event. It was a Saturday in early spring, May, 4 months old. Claire and I at the kitchen table with coffee and the farmer's market pastries she'd started getting from the stand on Columbus on Saturday mornings. Claire's phone was face up on the table. She'd been checking it less. I'd noticed this over the last few weeks, the way it stayed in her pocket or face down on surfaces, rather than constantly in her hand, the way it had been during the 11 weeks when information was moving fast and everything required monitoring. It lit up with Ryan's name, not a call, a text. We both saw it. Claire looked at it for a moment. Then she picked up the phone, read whatever it said, set it back down. May's first picture, she said. He's asking if he can have one. I watched her face. She was quiet for a moment, picked up her coffee, set it down. What are you going to do? I said. She looked at the bassinet in the living room. May doing her Saturday morning awake time, staring at the ceiling with complete focus. Send him one, she said. She has a father. Whatever he is to me, he's her father. She paused. She'll make her own decisions about him when she's old enough to make decisions. She picked up her phone, scrolled to a photo. I couldn't see which one. I'm not going to be the person who withholds her from him. Out of anger, I've already decided not to carry. She sent the photo, put the phone face down, picked up her pastry. Okay, she said, like the matter was filed. Tell me about the gala venue situation. I told her about the gala venue situation, the thing I want to tell you, the thing this whole story has been building toward, even if it doesn't look like a dramatic ending, is what happened the following Saturday. Claire called me at 8 in the morning, which was early for a Saturday, and asked if I wanted to come to the farmer's market with her in May. This was not unusual. We'd been doing it most Saturdays since Claire started going. May and the carrier against Claire's chest, the three of us moving through the Columbus Avenue stands in the particular slow, easy way of a Saturday morning with nowhere urgent to be. What was different was what Claire said when I got there. I arrived at 9. She was already ready, May and the carrier, facing out now. The new position she'd graduated to that let her see everything. Claire was in a yellow sweater I hadn't seen before, her hair down, looking more like herself than she had in longer than I could precisely locate. I have something to tell you, she said when she opened the door. Good something or processing something, I said. We had a system. Good, she said. Genuinely good. We walked to the market. May examined the world from the carrier with her focused stare, turning her head towards sounds and colors with the deliberate attention of a person taking inventory. Claire bought the good sourdough from the bread stand and cherry tomatoes and a bunch of tulips that were bright yellow and completely unnecessary and exactly right. At the coffee stand at the end of the market, while we waited for our order, she told me. I've been offered a promotion, she said. I turned to look at her. Senior director, she said. New position. And they're restructuring the analysis division, and they want me to lead the new group. She held the tulips against her chest. More money, real leadership scope, my own team. Claire, I said. I know, she said. I know. Her face was doing the thing where she was trying to contain something that didn't want to be contained. When did you find out? Thursday, she said. I've been sitting with it since Thursday. And I'm going to say yes, she said. I just needed to say it out loud to you first. She looked at me directly. I needed you to know that I did this, that this happened because of the work I did when I went back. Not because of anything else, not in spite of anything, because of what I did. My throat was tight. I know, I said. I want May to know that too, she said, when she's old enough to understand that her mother came back from something hard and then built something real. She looked at her daughter in the carrier. I want that to be the story she knows. The coffee order came up. I picked up both cups, handed Claire hers. We stood at the edge of the farmer's market on a Saturday in early spring, the city doing its warm morning thing around us, people with their bags and strollers and dogs, the ordinary beautiful noise of New York in a good mood. And I looked at my best friend with her yellow sweater and her tulips, and her daughter facing the world from the carrier against her chest. You built it, I said, every part of it. She looked at me. Her eyes were bright. Yeah, she said, I did. She called Diane that Monday to formally close out their working relationship. I know this because she mentioned it briefly, the way you mention administrative things that close chapters. Diane's response apparently was, "It was a pleasure. Don't need me again." Claire had laughed. "I don't plan to." "Good," Diane said. "But if you do, you know where I am." That was Diane. $450 an hour and a send-off that was more warmth than it looked like. The promotion started in early summer. Claire sent me a photo on her first day in the new role. Taken at her desk, May's picture in a frame in the corner of the frame, the city visible through the window behind her, Claire in the particular expression she wore when she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She looked like herself, the full version, the one that had always been there, that had kept building through 11 weeks of careful strategy and a long winter of grief, and a Tuesday morning when she remembered her password on the second try. I put the photo in my favorites. May was 6 months old the first time she laughed. I was there. We were in the living room on a Sunday afternoon, the three of us on the floor. The same floor where Claire had put together the living room she loved, with the books she'd actually read, and the art she'd chosen slowly, and the throw blanket from the West Village. And Claire was making a face at May that was genuinely undignified, and May thought it was the best thing that had ever happened. The laugh was small and sudden, and completely real. May looked surprised by it herself, then did it again like she was confirming it was still available. Claire's face. I wish I could give you the exact word for Claire's face in that moment. The way it opened. The way everything that had been carried and processed and worked through and rebuilt was suddenly just present, just there, in the specific, unrepeatable moment of her daughter laughing for the first time on a Sunday afternoon in the apartment that was entirely hers. I don't have the exact word. I just know that whatever it was the answer to everything the last year had asked. Ryan Harmon, for what it's worth, did the thing people sometimes do after they've lost something they didn't value until it was gone. He got quiet. He showed up for the logistics Diane's system required. He sent May a birthday card 6 months early, addressed to Claire, all with a note I never read but which Claire described as genuine in the way of someone who had finally run out of performance and was left with whatever was underneath it. Claire filed it, not in the trash, not in a place of honor, just filed. The way you file things that are part of a record without being part of a life. That was the right amount of space to give it. A year later, on a warm Saturday morning, May Mercer took her first steps across the living room floor. 3 unsteady, determined steps toward Claire, who was kneeling with her arms out and her whole face open, saying, "Come on, come on, come on." She made it, landed against Claire's chest, breathless and triumphant. Claire held her daughter and looked up at me over May's shoulder with the complete, specific, real happiness of a woman who had built her life exactly right. "She walks," Claire said. "She walks," I said. Outside, New York kept going, as it always did.